F sharp, A sharp, revisited.
Hello everyone and welcome to F Sharp A Sharp Revisited. I am Joe, like I always am. Nick is Nick, like he always is.
Like always,
Like always.
nothing has changed in the past week since we recorded.
What are we doing this podcast, Nick?
Well, we had a nice message in
Yeah.
from one of our fans. Like, I know, they exist. Wow, who would have thought? We have fans. We have a fan, at least.
At least one.
So, our lovely fan messaged in.
Yes.
Her name is Callie.
We love you, Callie.
We love you, Callie. And she sent in a message asking us if we could discuss something. So
Yeah.
I will read out her message. Hello. I hope messaging you all isn't weird. It really isn't, by the way.
We're very happy.
It means so much to us that you message in. I've enjoyed listening to your podcast and loved the Mr. McTidge channel. Shameless plug, Joe has a channel, it's called Mr. McTidge, it's brilliant. He has like 34,000 views on one of his videos, it's insane. The Kid A videos really resonated with me in particular. Anyways, something I'd love to hear you'll discuss, she uses the word you'll, clearly like not from around here. Something I'd love to hear you'll discuss is the reception of modern music by older generations. Got into an argument today with my boss, who is a staunch classic rock lover who thinks that all modern music sucks because no one plays real instruments anymore. Not sure where he got that from. And that electronic music isn't real music. It kills me that there are people that can't see how incredibly complex and diverse much of today's music is when there are artists of various genres like Radiohead, Grizzly Bear, Flying Lotus, Frank Ocean, etc., creating incredible music. Or that rap and electronic heavy music is simplistic and easy to make because it doesn't always involve traditional instruments. How can Kendrick Lamar, or Tekka, or Panda Bear be seen as such? I realise everyone has different tastes, and I definitely love some classic rock as much as any middle-aged white dude. It just frustrates me to an unhealthy degree that people can't look past that Ed Sheeran song they heard on the radio that one time, and at least have some respect for the innovative work so many talented musicians are putting out these days. This turned into a mini rant, but would love to hear you guys discuss this if it's something you feel as well. Well, we're up to this challenge.
Yeah.
So the basic thing that we have been asked to discuss is the way in which older generations perceive newer music as inferior to older music and the possible reasons why. And I'm guessing this could also include general reasons why one may be better than the other and vice versa. So I guess the main points that we are going to be looking at on the one side is all modern music sucks because no one plays real instruments anymore. Electronic music isn't real music, and that rap/electronic music is simplistic or easy to make, with the opposing points that much of today's music is incredibly rich and diverse, citing Radiohead and Grizzly Bear and Flying Lotus and Frank Ocean as examples. So, where do we start with this then, Joe?
So where do we start? Where do we start? There's a lot to cover, I think.
Yeah, well, I watched a video recently done by YouTuber/musician Adam Neely.
Yeah.
He did a video talking about how your music tastes are set at the age of sort of 13 to 14, and he cited a 2018 New York Times study of Spotify data which revealed that adult music preferences are most influenced by listening habits around the age of 13 to 14, and that's the time when that's about the time that pubertal growth hormones make everything we're experiencing, including music, seem really important. On top of that, there was a survey by streaming service Deezer of 1,000 Britons that found that you stop discovering music at around the age of 30 due to a few factors, feeling overwhelmed by mass choice, having a demanding job, caring for young children, and so on and so forth. And as contemporary music is more widely available to us and we're less restricted to what we listen to by what our parents play at around the age of 13 to 14, we often gravitate towards these contemporary music releases. And I guess when you're over the age of 30, you only really, if you fall into one of these categories that feels overwhelmed and such, you only end up listening to what's played on the radio. So a lot of the stations are probably going to play quite similar music because it's popular.
Yeah.
That's what's going to get them the most listeners. So that's what most people will end up being subjected to.
Mm. So the sum of your argument is that it's generational.
Potentially, I
That
mean,
you gravitate towards the music of your generation.
Yeah, and not to say that there's no way after the age of 30 you can listen to new things, or you can't listen to genres that you didn't listen to when you're 13 or 14. Like, I mentioned this argument to my dad, and my dad just went on about how, I listened to jazz when I was 20, and I listened to folk when I was 40, and I listened to classical when I was 50, and just this one man by himself completely disproved all of these studies. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, a study can't account for everyone, unfortunately. Certainly not Nick's dad. But I do find that interesting because you still get a lot of people online, and I don't know whether they're just being contrarian, but a lot of younger people saying that they actually don't like modern music. That they're born. Well, the meme is they're born in the wrong generation.
Yeah,
as it is.
the wrong generation.
As it is. So to me, that does at least give weight to the argument that there is something different from music of older generations that is giving some kind of satisfaction that most new music isn't. So I do think that. I do think there's a strong weight to the generational argument, but I do think there's something more about that, exactly what styles are able to offer.
Yeah, well, I guess this sort of leads into another point, which is the idea that can new music really be considered in any way superior to older music without the gift of retrospect to fully comprehend the circumstances of its creation? Because I feel like a lot of the time, at least with like sort of classic albums or things that like are generally considered terrible, we're just sort of told what to think. Like, you could ask a lot of people what they thought of Baby by Justin Bieber, and they'd say it's terrible. And if you asked why, they might not be able to tell you.
Yeah.
Same with Rebecca Black's Friday. I think we talked about this when we were talking about Cher Lloyd's Swagger Jagger.
Yeah.
And it was on the list of, music considered the worst, and we both went, why?
Yeah.
It's not that
well,
bad.
I understand why, but it's also that I kind of like it. I think that's just because someone like me or someone like you, we don't get told what to like and what not to like. We'll have our own opinions, and we're just going to have to deal with it.
But many things that are considered the best now were actually critically panned upon release. So jazz as a genre was associated with immorality, and the Beatles were considered an assault on society. And I believe I read somewhere it said so dogmatically insensitive to the magic of the art that they qualify as crown heads of anti-music.
Okay, I mean, that's
ouch.
But that's coming from people of puritanistic thinking, though. I don't really consider their arguments valid.
Well, what about films like I mean, this is going away from music, but it happens with all styles of art. So films like Psycho by Alfred Hitchcock, now considered to be an absolute masterpiece, was hated upon its release because it was considered to be like I said, immoral. It had a scene where it showed a toilet on screen, and that was just completely unforgivable. I think that may be the case. There are these Puritans, but there are many examples of albums that are sort of released and on the spot they are deemed classics as well. It gets such immense acclaim. So, for example, To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar, Illinois by Sufjan Stevens, Deaf Consciousness by Have a Nice Life, The Glow Part 2 by The Microphones, Turn on the Bright Lights by Interpol, Untrue by Burial, and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West are all ones that I sort of thought up earlier. These albums are all new and they're all considered classics on the spot, so surely the fact that they're just so instantly acclaimed, doesn't that just prove that new music does have merit, at least compared to old music?
It does. I mean, new music definitely has merit. I mean, they haven't stood the test of time yet, and sometimes albums can fall to hype. I mean, I don't think many of the albums that you've just listed are just a product of hype at all, but that's a really difficult one to answer without.
I do get what you mean about
any retrospect.
I do get what you mean about things falling out of favour. some things which were considered okay at one point are not considered okay anymore.
I think maybe if we look at maybe not the 2010s but the noughties, how many albums of absolute classic status were released in that decade that you can think of?
Mad Villainy by Mad Villain is the first one that comes to mind. Funeral by Arcade Fire, I would argue as well, received pretty intense acclaim upon release. This is quite hard when you get put on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I always think, to me, that decade doesn't really compare to, like, say, the 70s, where there are just so many classic releases that were both popular and critically acclaimed, and, like, at least in my eyes, great, but in the eyes of many people, to be great. And you could say the same about probably to a lesser extent, but the same about the 80s and 90s. But then going forward, it becomes less easy to discern exactly what those...
I do suppose that a fair few of the albums I just listed aren't exactly in the public eye.
Yeah, like Death Consciousness.
To Pimp a Butterfly most certainly is, and Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy are. But apart from that, you could maybe argue Turn on the Bright Lights, but
I wouldn't say that's in the kind of that isn't part of the public discourse on music.
I think at the time when it came out it was, but Illinois and Deaf Consciousness, The Globe Heart 2 and Untrue most certainly not.
And I think that may be where the disconnect is kind of coming into play, because I do think so much of the best music released today doesn't get paid attention to in the mainstream. It just doesn't. So I don't know whether this is kind of getting a little bit off topic now, but there seems to be this disconnect, certainly in this last decade, in the 2010s. Maybe it was starting in the noughties as well, where so many of the best music just isn't getting noticed as much by mainstream publications, by radio stations, and therefore by a lot of widespread listeners. And in the internet age, people are going online to find where these great albums are. Like I use Rate You Music, Sputnik Music, all these places, Metacritic, to see what all the new music releases are, and then to go to forums and places to see, okay, what's actually good to listen to. Because I'm not going to the charts, am I? I'm not going to top 40. I'm not going to, best singles, best albums. I'm not really reading many of the kind of more mainstream publications on music. And I do think because of that, there is now this disconnect between, I suppose, what you could call normie pop music culture and people who are music fans like me and you and Callie, and, well, music fans who operate in this sphere where there's actually good music being released, but it just doesn't trickle through to the normie section, except on the very rare occasion, like on To Pimp a Butterfly, where you've got some kind of a crossover happening.
Well, I mean, has chart music ever been good in general?
Yes. I mean...
I remember I was watching a YouTube video, and I think it was just a list of the most popular songs of each year released in America. And I remember going through that and just thinking, God, there's a lot of rubbish here.
Yeah. Oh, there has always been trash in the charts, but I think in at least the 60s, 70s and 80s, there were some gold in the charts as well. I mean, it might have been slim pickings as always, but not as slim as they are today, I would argue.
Well, you think about last year you had the amazing Make Me Feel by Janelle Monáe, which did really well in the charts. You had This Is America by Childish Gambino, which was another great track. A few years ago, and you're probably not going to enjoy me defending this track, but Somebody That I Used to Know by Gautier was in the charts, and I thought that was an excellent song. Kendrick Lamar ends up in the charts a fair amount, and Brockhampton's had a #1 album in America. I mean, I suppose that is still slim pickings compared to
slim pickings. I mean,
things.
I wouldn't have picked Make Me Feel by Janelle Monáe as an example, because that is such a homage to Prince that it's hard. I mean, it is a modern song, but it's also a song that is very much based on previous work. So I'm not sure exactly how I feel about that. But back in the day, you had #1 songs like Bohemian Rhapsody, Eleanor Rigby, House of the Rising Sun, I Want You Back by the Jackson 5, which are undeniable pop hits that are also great tracks and that were popular. And they were in the public discourse, the normie, so to speak.
You've got me really happy just thinking about Want You Back now.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
a
song.
happy song.
I had you to myself.
But then in the 80s as well, you had songs like Take On Me, and you had Kate Bush running riot. So, so I do think, I mean, there are good pop songs. Like I wrote down some songs that I thought were of iconic status released in the last few, like kind of the last few years, that kind of do meet the kind of crossover material, that criteria that I've kind of been talking about. And I thought of Forget You by CeeLo Green, Viva La Vida by Coldplay, and Bad Romance by Lady Gaga. And I kind of think those are a little bit slim pickings and perhaps not as good as those pop songs that I mentioned from like the 70s. So, so there is that. So I can kind of see where Callie's Boss is coming from, that pop music today isn't quite hitting it as much as pop music did back in the day.
I guess, it depends on what music he is actually talking about when he states that outright modern music is not as good as older music. Because if he's talking about purely chart music, then okay, I guess you could argue that. But that does fall once again into the idea of music that has got the gift of retrospect to aid it is generally considered better because you've had that time. You don't look at lists of the greatest albums ever made and see many from the modern day just simply because we haven't had enough time to digest them. But if you're talking about music in general, I think that that's a load of rubbish, straight up. I think musicians are far less restricted in what they can achieve now than ever before. And I was going to attack some of the few main points that he put forward. So, all modern music sucks because no one plays real instruments anymore. Like, who are you to decide what a real instrument is anymore? Are you saying that Kraftwerk, for example, because they used synthesizers before anyone else really did, like does that mean that they're not, proper musicians? They don't play what was considered real instruments? Like, a lot of modern artists now take after them. Synthesizers are key elements in a lot of modern music. Sounds of drum machines invented in the 80s are sought after today in modern music as well. And technology has advanced, and therefore people have, taken it on board. They've advanced with it. You can't discredit the abilities of modern musicians because they choose to stick with what's available to them at the time. And also, people do play real instruments still. Where's this idea that people don't come from? Look at Ed Sheeran plays guitar, Adele plays piano, Muse is one of the biggest rock bands in the world at the moment, and even if they're incorporating more modern elements into their sound, they still play instruments that were used back in the 60s.
Yeah, I agree with literally all of those points, Nick, but I'm going to offer some counterpoints anyway. You mentioned that there are more tools available than ever before to write music. That doesn't mean that artists actually capitalize on it, though. I don't, because when you do think about the majority of not just chart music, of music in general, music today is saturated, well, currently by trap music. Strangely enough, country music. There's so much country music that is pretty much exactly the same coming out of America right now, and the same kind of pop, kind of R&B influenced pop music. That is a huge percentage. I couldn't work out a number, but just from what I know, listening to all of the music releases week after week last year in the charts, a huge percentage of music actually isn't that inventive at all, and it does rely on the same electronic tropes that I can understand have probably grown weary on quite a lot of people. So there's that.
I feel like that's looking just at mainstream music again.
Not just mainstream, because a lot of this music doesn't go into the charts, but it's still being churned out. So
I guess. Well, let me move on to another point that I want to attack.
Okay.
This idea that electronic music isn't real music. And once again, I'm assuming that this means that they don't assume that Kraftwerk and Brian Eno are real musicians, especially with Brian Eno's later work. And There was once a famous quote. I had to look this up. In fact, James, our gulag keeper, I noticed he had it on a T-shirt when I last saw him. There's a famous quote taken from a fanzine called Signburn Issue 1, which stated, "This is a chord, this is another, this is a third, now form a band." And it was the impetus to do something that helped the genre of punk grow. And if you compare the musical ability of, say, the Sex Pistols to the subtle complexities in John Hopkins' music, I would wager that the dopamine rush you get from listening to Luminous Beings in comparison to Anarchy in the UK is just, it's far greater in most people. And plucking a few strings and singing Kumbaya does not give you more credit as a musician than someone who spends long periods of time perfecting their craft just because they use synthesizers in a digital audio workstation.
I 100% agree with your points, but I do think you have been very selective with your examples of John Hopkins and the Sex Pistols, because there is a lot of electronic music today where I see people, they find their sound, they find their beat, and then they press Control C and Control V. And
But at the same time, I mean, isn't the point? Like, it's the proof that electronic music can be real music. Just because I'm comparing the best of one to the worst of other. I mean, if I wanted to
Yeah.
prove that punk music had more credibility than electronic, I wouldn't use that example, would I? I would use, say, I mean, I know you won't agree with this, I would use the Dead Kennedys and compare them to, say, Torre Moy, who I mentioned last week's
Yeah.
podcast,
I
as
know- yeah, I
not,
get
not
what you
enjoying
mean.
it.
You should have said Jeff Rosenstock for.
I do like
for
Jeff
good.
Rosenstock. He's one of my favourite men.
So yeah, there is that. But I do think it gets at. I kind of do want to get at a point to defend Callie's boss's position. That jumps off from that, and that is the use of quote unquote real instruments. I know what he means by that, as in instruments that are played where the performance from the human directly affects the presence of the sound coming out, because it's a lot easier to get a human touch from a sound like that than it is electronic music. And I don't say that to discredit electronic music, but it does offer analog music where there is human touch and it's able to push out emotion that electronic music just isn't capable of doing. And I'm not saying that to say electronic music is bad. I love a lot of IDM, electronica, but of course that's for different reasons. Whereas if someone is looking for more of a human touch in their music, then they're going to look more towards, like I said, analog music, where the human touch is really put forward. And what I will say in conjunction with that is that you don't get an awful lot of that nowadays. Like back in the day, I always just think of Pink Floyd, and we've talked about Wish You Were Here, and the incredible guitar solos that are so damn moving. They're incredible. You don't get stuff like that nowadays. I can understand why someone would feel like that's music on a different level to a lot of electronic music that we get nowadays.
I just want to say, I know that this is very much your personal opinion though, because I would say, for example, American football, on some of their later works, they recently released a track, believe it or not, called "Uncomfortably Numb," which is obviously a reference to Pink Floyd, but there are some moments on that track which are just they invoke similar sounds, I think, to the solos from Pink Floyd's time. Those sort of quite distant guitars, and I feel like it's probably every bit as human on that as it was back then. So that's sort of me getting to the point that you do still get those things, maybe not as much, but then
they're not as present in the public discourse. So,
yeah, but then there's also the idea that you get more of a human touch from someone playing a guitar solo like that. So say if you were to have a synthesizer and play something similar, that's electronic music. So why wouldn't that be human?
Oh, it can be human, but I'm talking more about programmed sounds.
Okay.
Like, okay, this is an interesting point. So music in the last 30, well actually 50, I would say 50 years has progressed more and more and more and more and more, literally every single decade from the 70s to the present, to have straight rhythms. And when I say by that is that every instrument is played exactly on the rhythm, very mechanically, so to speak, to be in tune with electronic music and the direction it's heading in. Whereas in the kind of 70s, at least with popular music, and I would say in music in general, there was a lot more leeway for rhythmic shifts and being able to allow the emotion to dictate the speed and the mood of the song in that way, which doesn't really happen as much these days.
Okay. Yeah, I'll concede to that,
So
to be honest. I guess that in a sort of way leads into the other point I wanted to sort of discuss, which is this idea that rap and electronic music is simplistic or easy to make. People that think this, I would wager many of them have not actually tried. I mean, once again, you listen to a release by, I'm going to say it, John Hopkins, or
Yeah.
Burial, or Aphex Twin, James Blake, Boards of Canada, Clarence Clarity, and you do that, you try and make that music, and you tell me that it's easy to make electronic music. Even looking at rap and artists like XXX Tentacion, Kamikaze, and Migos, they have every bit as much as I hate to admit it, they have every bit as much ability in creating and crafting their music as many punk bands like the Ramones and the Buzzcocks, which many people consider to be, brilliant.
Yeah.
So, I don't think some electronic music and rap music definitely easier to make than others, but then you're just discrediting whole genres of music which rely on simpler composition.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you.
But
but there is a lot of mainstream music. Again, I'm going back to the whole mainstream point, where the electronic elements are a very simple Control-C, Control-V, copy and paste part of a backing, which does take out quite a lot of the what I would say, it's something that's very easily abused. It's easier to abuse that in electronic music, that kind of repetitive nature, than it is in other music. And there are artists that do, unfortunately. So yeah. Yeah.
I think there's sort of one more thing I wanted to touch on, which I can sort of see as being an argument. It's not outright stated, but the performance element, and you think about the great live performers of back in the 60s and 70s. You've got
Queen.
Hendrix setting his guitar on fire. You can imagine Pete Townsend smashing his guitar up on stage.
Yeah.
And I feel like artists nowadays definitely don't do that as much, if at all.
They're not as crazy.
I can't think of the last time that I saw someone do damage on a stage. But at the same time, do you remember when we went and saw Sigur Rós live?
Yeah. Oh, that was amazing.
Exactly.
I loved that.
Like that was one of the most amazing concerts I've ever been to. And I feel like live music doesn't necessarily have to be about doing outlandish things on stage. It's about the experience of being there. It just has to
sound amazing.
But even then, I don't think it has to sound amazing, because I saw her at the Drive-In live at Reading Festival in 2012, and there's an amazing video of at the Drive-In playing at Jules Holland, and it sounds like they were playing Guitar Hero and they were about 1 second away from failing the song.
Oh.
But it's what they were doing on stage that was so incredible to watch.
Yeah.
But I imagine, like, as long as you have presence on stage, as long as you're providing something that the audience is going to appreciate, then, just do that. And a lot of modern musicians have performance skill coming out of the wazoo. The latest Flotsam and Jetsam release that I mentioned last week proves that it's not like nowadays musicians aren't skilled anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess in the same way, a lot of modern music that is available to listen to easily, the music is a form of escapism. So a lot of the music that people like to listen to isn't particularly taxing to listen to. So of course it's not going to have, really fast or quite technical guitar solos. It's not going to make really dramatic use of music theory to make really complex arrangements.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I once again I agree with everything you're saying.
Oh God, Joe, please.
But you do get some electronic artists that go up on stage, press a button on their laptop, and that's the live performance.
How do you know that?
Skrillex.
Have you seen the actual software that Skrillex uses in his live performances? Because it is more than that.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay, fair enough.
I mean, granted, there are some there are definitely performers who do that, but I think a lot of the ones that do that nowadays, actually, when they're doing their live performance, it's more about what they're performing on stage as
Yeah.
rappers.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time when music is electronic and doesn't really have the possibility to have showmanship on
Yeah.
stage, they do like Sigur Rós did. I think about bands like Justice or Daft Punk, and they've got amazing light shows going on in
Yeah.
the background, which isn't necessarily about the music, but it helps to enhance the experience.
Yeah.
Just to finish off, Joe, how about you present a general case as devil's advocate, which you so clearly enjoy being?
Well, so this is well, what can I say that I haven't really said already? I don't think where Cali's boss is coming from is he's coming from a point of view of a normie, so to speak. He's only seeing what's being discussed in the mainstream discourse when it comes to music, and in that sense there is very, very, very little diversity in music. It's oversaturated by the same pop songs, the same trap songs, the same country songs if you live in America.
Don't swear, Joe.
I'm sorry. And currently there are a lot of bandwagons in music as well that people jump on, especially relating to those genres that I've just mentioned. We have a problem currently with celebrities trying to make music, and music has also more than ever become a vehicle of trying to attain celebrity status, which has kind of fed into this really uninspiring, bland, soulless pop machine. And yeah, I think that's my devil's advocate point. I'm just going to say this now. I've basically been doing the devil's advocate thing throughout the whole podcast. I basically agree with Nick. I agree with Callie. Like, music today is pretty fantastic, but you do have to go searching for it, is my overall point of view.
Yeah, like my big point for the end is just simply you just need to know where to look. Popular music has always appealed to the masses as a form of escapism, and often simplicity is what we need in life. But if you want to find this amazing music, I mean, I'm sure there are loads of bands nowadays that are still trying to replicate the sounds of the past. They're still modern music, and you'd enjoy them. You can't.
Oh, Greta Van Fleet.
Okay, no, I did think of them, but I wasn't going to mention them.
Oh dear. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that.
So, just go on Sputnik Music, go in their new releases section, look at whichever one has the highest score. If it's a genre that you think you might like or a genre that you want to try and appreciate more, try it out.
Yeah.
I'm sure, and go on YouTube, type in albums to help me get into such and such genre. Try Deep Cuts' channel. Deep Cuts has got loads of 5 albums to get you into such and such genre.
Love Deep Cuts.
Yeah, so just do that, you know.
If you're willing to put in the effort with music, you will get rewarded.
And I understand, like I said earlier, you get to a certain age, it becomes a bit overwhelming to do these sorts of things potentially. But everything is overwhelming if you're not going to try in the first place.
Yeah, and you don't. It's not like you have to. I mean, if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's not like you have to know everything about music or what you need to listen to. Maybe just pick. Oh, I'm going to listen to 5 new albums this month. That's going to be my goal, and just see where it takes you.
I tell you what, how about we do this, Joe? How about we each come up with an album now, which is a good gateway into a certain genre of music. So I will start.
Okay.
I will start. Let's say you want to get into heavier genres of music.
Yeah.
How about you try the new Necrogoblicon album, Welcome to Bonkers? Even if you don't like the heavier parts, there's still plenty of parts on it which could make you laugh, could make you see the lighter side of it. Even just listen to The Magic Spider. You know, that is the least heavy track on the album, arguably. and it is also one
It's
of
lots
the.
of fun.
It is an incredible amount of fun. Or if you don't like happy music, try Deaf Heaven's album Sunbather.
Yeah.
You know, it's definitely darker than Necrogoblicon, but it also makes great use of major keys, which you don't hear that much in metal music. So, you know, give it a shot.
Yeah. Now I need to think of think of an example. Yeah.
Give me one on Modern Frog, Joe.
Prog. To get yourself into modern prog, I would recommend A Raven That Refused to Sing by Stephen Wilson, because that very much captures elements of old prog, but with kind of a few new stylings as well. So it's very easy to get into, and he's one of those artists that have a lot of links with a lot of other modern artists, so it's very easy to branch off from that album and find other music if you like that album to listen to as well.
And if you listen to anything by Stephen Wilson, you are guaranteed to have the most amazing sounding production.
Oh yeah,
Like, he's a god.
like
He's a god of mixing and mastering. Oh my life.
yeah.
I still maintain that Trains is one of the most amazing sounding songs, period.
Yeah, can't disagree with you there.
Okay, we've had our big discussion.
Big discussion.
Let's do something arguably more fun.
Arguably. Well, because I have a lot of ideas. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. I listened to Weezer's new album, the Teal Album. Let's get some quick hot takes on.
I despise this album. I hate this album. It is, at the moment, I mean, it is a covers album, so I'm giving it a bit of slack, but it is my least favourite album of the year so far.
Yeah.
It is 10 tracks of completely straight played covers that sound awful, and it's just a clear cash-in attempt from them having their most successful song in decades be a cover of Africa by Toto.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they sound like a school band. That's literally what they sound like. They didn't. The thing is, they play it straight on their instruments, but it doesn't really sound like they've made any attempt to Weezerify the songs. They're just
like it very much relies on. Oh, look, it's Rivers Cuomo singing. He's got a bit of a funny voice. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Ha ha ha.
All I'll say is that I did get a bit of a kick from them covering No Scrubs, but
That's the only reason it's a 2 out of 10 rather than a 1 out of 10.
so
But I still think that it's just disgusting as an album.
But the thing is, I can't hate this album because if I was an established musician, I would want to do the same thing as them. Because there are quite a lot of well, they're basically pop songs. Some of them slightly questionable, like No Scrubs, but but it made me think. I would actually quite like to make an album full of covers of slightly questionable pop songs. So I went ahead and made a list of 10 songs that I would like to cover, and I put them in an order that actually kind of flows, and I want to see what Nick's opinion of these songs would be.
So just to get this straight beforehand, are you doing this Weezer style in that you're covering them completely straight, or are you doing them Joe style, in which case it's going to be every single song in 13/8 time, and it's going to change key every 3 seconds? And
No. This is as straight as possible, really.
Okay.
Okay, the first song, you have to open with a banger, of course, and that's Crank That by Soulja Boy. Nick has left the building. You? That song is hilarious. Oh, I love it.
A bad person, Joe.
I know.
No, to be honest, it's not as bad a song as Turn My Swag On.
Turn My Swag On is too much even for me. Oh, so yeah, I would open with Crank That by Soulja Boy, which actually leads rather well into the second track. I did put quite a bit of thought into the flow of this album. So the track number 2 would be MacArthur Park by Richard Harris.
I wanted you to cover that. I asked you to cover that and you said no.
Yeah, but then I've had a change of heart since then.
MacArthur's Park is
melting in the rain.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that song so much. And I don't think I can take
sweet
it.
Green icing's running down. Someone
Let the cake out in the rain. And I don't think that I can take it, because it took so long to bake it, and I'll never have that recipe again. Oh no! Oh,
That may be
dear.
the best sing-along we've ever had on this podcast.
Oh, I love that so much. And that song flows immaculately well into the next song, which is Short People by Randy Newman.
Short people ain't got no reason to live.
Oh.
That's my second favourite Randy Newman song. My favourite Randy Newman song is Simon Smith and His Amazing Dancing Bear.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But Short People is... It's just that slightly bit more offensive, I suppose, and just funny. And yeah, I love that track. Number 4, you probably guessed that a song like this would be on my list.
Is it Radiohead?
Yes, it's Creep.
I've heard you sing Creep before. It's very good.
Thank you very much.
You do a very good Tom York impression.
Thank you. And it is true that I am indeed a creep. So, very fitting.
You're not a creep, Joe. You are a weirdo, but you're not a creep.
Thanks, Nick.
And I do wonder what the hell you're doing here.
What am I doing
And
here?
actually, you don't belong here.
Yeah, I should run.
You should run out that door.
Yeah. Following on thematically from Creep, I then would cover Stacey's Mom by Fountains of Wayne.
It's a good song. Can't say no to that.
Oh, here's an anecdote.
It's a bit worrying that you're singing Stacey's Mom when you do have a good friend called Stacey.
Yeah, she knows I like that song. But here's a fun anecdote, which I don't think I've talked about on the podcast. When I was in school, me and some friends, we covered that song and we auditioned it for the school talent show. They wouldn't let us perform it.
Well, that's shit.
But yeah, that was fun, and I would cover that song again. And then moving on from that, Hot and Cold by Katy Perry.
That is Katy Perry's best song.
I really like that song.
This is coming from someone that gave her latest album a 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
Hot and Cold is a banger.
Hot and Cold is great. I love that track.
Hot and you're cold, yes and you're no. You're in, then you're out. You're up, then you're down. It's wrong when it's right. It's black and it's white. We fight, we break up. We kiss, we make up.
Whoever said that pop music today isn't good?
His boss.
Anyway, and then moving on from that, probably what I consider the single best mainstream pop song of all time, Toxic by Britney Spears. I love that track. I would cover the hell out of it.
Yeah, I know you would.
And then, following on from Toxic, of course, I would cover Sexy Back by Justin Timberlake.
Not filthy.
Not filthy. I mean, Sexy Back is his best song.
Do you have a sexy back?
No, I really don't. I'm really out of place covering this song, but I'm going to anyway. I say it like I'm actually going to do this album. I might do when I'm middle-aged and need a bit of a cash-in. So yeah. And then, penultimate track on the album, track number 9, would be TikTok by Kesha. Another iconic song from the modern era. So, Nick is looking a little bit...
Still, I just don't like it.
Oh, I mean, it's the trashiest, quite possibly one of the trashiest songs ever written, but that's kind of why I like it. So
I wonder what P. Diddy feels like when he wakes up in the morning. Is P. Diddy like...
Wake up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy.
Or is this how P. Diddy feels when he wakes up in the morning, or is it just how P. Diddy just feels generally? Because she's feeling like P. Diddy, but like if I said, I feel like Joe...
Wait, who is P. Diddy?
The rapper.
I've never heard him before.
Moving on.
I was thinking maybe it's maybe it was some kind of reference to a state of mind, but never mind. Yeah, with that song, I just want an excuse to say the party don't start till I walk in. But then I would finish off the album with Suki Suki Daisuki by Jun Tagawa. So yeah, perfect ending to the album.
I can't say I know that one, so I can't comment.
I'm going to force you to watch the English subtitles.
The fact that you're telling me that you're going to force me to do it means that I'm not going to enjoy it.
Okay. That's probably how it's best enjoyed, though, to be honest.
Best enjoyed by not enjoying it.
Yes.
Okay.
So that would be my personal Teal album. How would you rate that out of 10, Nick?
I would give it a strong 6 out of 10.
Ah, that's pretty good for a covers album.
Yeah, pretty good. Sure. I wish I'd thought of some things that I would cover now, but I was just too busy hating Weezer to think.
Yeah. See, this is my problem. I don't hate bad music enough, and I just think, what if I did what the bad people did?
I would definitely do Jump by Van Halen. That would definitely be in there. Oh, songs are good. I Think We're Alone Now, I'd probably do a cover of. Think we're alone now. There doesn't seem to be anyone around. I would have done No Scrubs, but I don't like Weezer anymore, so I can't be seen.
That's taken.
Yeah, that's taken already. I'm just trying to think of good cheesy hits that Ninja Sex Party haven't already covered, basically. But they have already covered them all. They did Africa. They did More Than a Feeling. Hooked on a Feeling. There we go. Hooked on a Feeling by Blue Swede. I'd do that. It's going to take too long to think of any more. So that would be my EP of covers.
Yeah, EP to go along.
And my fourth track will be This Is How You Remind Me by Nickelback.
Oh.
That's their best song.
I don't support that, but okay.
I don't support Nickelback, but if they have a best song, it's that.
Yeah, fair enough. I would have gone with Rockstar, but what are you going to do? I think on that note, we should end it before we lose any more credibility. Having good taste in music.
Yeah, thank you to our lovely fan for getting in touch and asking us to discuss this. We've had a great time.
Yeah, lots of fun.
And I hope that you enjoyed Joe's dreaming.
Yeah. Aww.
It's nice to have dreams.
Yeah.
For now, I have been Nick.
I have been Joe.
And you have been listening to F Sharp A Sharp Revisited special bonus episode.
Woohoo! Goodbye.
Bye. F Sharp A Sharp.